everyone, I'm Gemma Star and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. Heart Warriors is a series I've been guided and inspired to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata Judah. Kata Judah being a beautiful sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, our sacred feminine site. So what I'm here to do is to give a platform to men so they can share their journey into the heart, their highs, their lows, tools, practices, insights, wisdom, what worked for them on their path that they can now share with the other men walking this journey, and of course us women who are walking right there beside them. My intention is to interview 100 men, and this is number 93. It's a man from Holland, and his name is Coen van Broekhoven. Now, Koen is a father, a coach, a therapist, and he supports men, women, and couples, and he works mainly in and with nature. He's spent the last 24 years walking the path of personal and spiritual development, and he says the journey is all about coming home from the head to the heart. So really excited to be chatting to Koen and hearing all about his journey from the head to the heart. Enjoy. Hello, Koen. Welcome to Heart Warriors. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm actually very nice. It's a bit early still in the Netherlands, and but it's sunny weather, so the summer is coming up finally. So I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Where about in the Netherlands are you?
I'm in the south of the Netherlands, but well, in terms of where you live, it's well, I don't know if you can speak about south, but it's so small, you know. But yeah, I live in the south near one of the, I think, five big cities in the Netherlands called Breda, and I'm living there in the area. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Good to know. Okay, let's find out a bit about you and your journey into the heart. So I always like to start with finding out about who's the man inside. When you drop your labels of father and coach and therapist, who's left inside?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Who is the man inside? Well, I could say he's a soul. I love the word spirit. So spirit, like we all are. Well, that's how I experience it. And then when I think about the man, then it's a man with a mission, going deeply inside into his own kingdom. And I love that word kingdom as well, the king, the sacred king, which reminds me of Jesus. For me, he was like an enormous spiritual teacher walking the face of the earth. So, for me as a man, it feels like I walk that same path somehow, a path of self-realization, coming home deeply into my heart. And on that path of getting there as deep as I can get till the last day before I'll die, I want to just, I'm curious about what I will find there, what's there, you know, and which the things I didn't have found yet, what can I find there still? That feels like a deep mission. And while walking that path inside, I also walk the same path outside in all kinds of areas in life. So yeah, that's, I think, the man I am, a man with a mission, and feels like being a role model for other men who want to walk that same path and have the courage to do so. So
yeah, I love this. Let's get straight into the heart, because I know you talk a lot about this, and you said the journey from the head to the heart, and you're just saying now you want to get your life mission to get into as deep as possible to the heart.
Yeah.
What does the heart represent for you on the masculine journey, and what, in a nutshell, what is this journey from the head to the heart?
Wow, that's an amazing question. What does the heart mean in a nutshell within the masculine path? It's coming home within the world of feelings. Actually, that's how I see it. And also with all the men I coach who live a lot in their head when we start, and then coming home in that body, but especially in the heart, that's where the whole, well, you could say the whole feminine world inside of us men lies and lives. And that heart is essential so I can really feel my deepest truth as a man and stand for my deepest truth in whatever context, in whatever situation, in whatever area of life that is. So that's exactly what the heart does. And when I'm connected with that heart area, and you see my hand naturally going to that place, you know, I don't think about this, it just happens. So it's probably there somewhere. I feel amazing waves of energy inside of me, but also waves of intuition, waves of possibilities, the right words to say, how I want to act in some kind of situation. So the heart is like the center for me as a man of my standing in my truth and standing my ground and being the leader in my own kingdom and taking the lead also for others. So it's a really, it's like maybe some kind of commando commando center or something like that, you know. And then the second question you asked, Gemma, was what was the second question again?
Oh, I can't remember now. But let's roll with what we've got. I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask double barrel questions. I don't come prepared. I just like, conversation. But so I'm fascinated by this masculine journey from the head into the heart. Now,
exactly.
And I love how you said, the heart had the feminine aspect and the feelings and the emotions and, the intuition. Now, is the ultimate goal to integrate the head and the heart and balance and harmonize the masculine and the feminine? Or is it to go from the head and stay in the heart? What do you think about that?
Yeah, before I answer that, let me first explain what I mean when I say the head, because what I actually mean then is the survival part of our brain. That's how I like to call it. So when we first start in this journey, then we're a lot of the times we are unconscious. So, and we live kind of in our heads, and in that part of the head, the survival part, there are all those, behavior patterns that we learned, that we took on from our environment, all kinds of survival mechanisms, all kinds of limiting beliefs, all kinds of suppressed emotions that also are suppressed into the body. And being in that way of surviving, living that way unconsciously, we live kind of in our heads. We are departed of our feelings, of our body. So the first step is becoming conscious. And my way of becoming conscious has always been going to the body. Of course, the head is also a part of the body, but going into the body using the feelings, so feeling what you feel right now, because the whole survival mechanism is based on going away of those feelings, not having to feel those suppressed emotions from the past anymore that did so much hurt and so much pain. So that's how I see, like, first of all, living in that head, and then we go into the body, into the feelings, and the center of it all is the heart. So, and then step by step, you will become conscious of what you did, how your ways were of coping, of surviving. You get away of that by becoming conscious and going to the feelings, and in that journey, you go deeper to the heart. That's actually how I experience it myself, and how I also support men on the same journey. And what I experience now, after all these years, like I think already consciously walking this path for 23 years of personal and spiritual development, and even further, because now I can see that as a little child of 3 or 4 years old, I was already doing this, but it was more unconsciously. On a spiritual part of this same story, I went even deeper inside my body, into the consciousness, and then I started to really come home into the heart and feel the difference between not only being conscious, but being conscious from the heart area. And then you feel that love, that energy that we all are. That's how I see it and how I experience it. And from there, the whole environment around me just kind of awakens or transforms into love, you know? So to give a simple example, I had a big issue with my mother. A lot of men have that. And my mother was a woman, how I remember it, as being a little boy who always criticized me, gave me a lot of boundaries where I needed space to explore, was very frustrated, lots of anxieties, and she all projected that onto me, also into my body. So I was healing that for so many years. So in her survival mechanism, she has some part that is very critical, frustrated, anxious. And this part still is there. But now when I'm in my heart and I experience her doing when she uses that behavior, I also see a woman that from a place of love means okay, you know, she wants to do good, but in a frustrated, critical way. And in the past, I only felt my pain with that when I was a little boy. And then I only could see that criticizing, frustrating woman that was bullying me. And now I just see a woman that actually wants to give love. But yeah, that's the best she can do at that moment. So that's a very big transformation.
Yeah, I love this conversation, Koen, because intention is very important. And I know I've done the same, you know, what you're saying here, you know, like people, I often look at people's intentions, because even though it might come across, you know, in not the best presentation, they're often delivering it the best they can, as you said, with the intention of love. It's just that it's filtered through their own wounds. So this is a
Yeah.
great point to raise, and you know, to bring awareness to. Is there anything else you want to say about intentions and how people might be able to see them, or you know, see through the pain and see the intention of the person?
Yeah, well, the point you make is actually amazing, because I always go to the essence of things. So I always go 1 or 2 steps back. So for example, if you want to change something or you want a better quality of your choices, you first need to transform the state from being, from where you make those choices. If you raise that quality, you automatically raise the quality of what comes next. For example, making a choice in something, doesn't matter what you do. So it's exactly the point you are making right now. Intention, you could also call it intention. So if your intention is love, then the quality of everything you say, you do, or whatever is love. But to get to that quality, you first need to go through your own wounds or be conscious of them. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And also of the behavior you normally express. So when I combine this with walking this path of personal and spiritual growth, that's how I like to call it, then for me, that's like the biggest, best intention you can have, you know, to go inside to somehow make sure that you can be the best version of yourself, whatever that means. So set high intentions. That would be my advice. And go for the best, but also start with yourself. and not in the outside world, because that's what we normally tend to do. You know, we start looking outside of ourselves for things that we can only find inside, and we want others to change while we need to change. It are just mirrors of ourselves. So like you and me now also in this conversation, you know.
Yeah,
That's really fun.
and I
Yeah.
also think it's important now to expand on what you were saying about survival mode, because so many men and women, but we're talking about men, are predominantly in survival mode, as in, thinking about financial survival, worrying about, bills, all the other survival modes of the lower chakras and the lower emotional energies. And you said, to get into the heart for them to start feeling and getting into that state of awareness. How does a man do that if he can recognize himself now as being in survival mode? And I'd love your definition of survival mode. Like, can you talk to men, explain, please, what you define as survival mode in a practical sense, and how they can start to be aware of it and rise out of it?
Yeah, that's a very beautiful question. So, how can you become conscious of your survival mode? Because that's a really hard part, and it's an essential part as well. So I would say it like this: if you feel or you notice that something frustrates you, or you something somehow hits you, you know, if you feel frustration with it, or you feel anxiety, or you feel ashamed, or you feel that you're maybe lacking something, whatever the feeling is, that's a signal of that you are in survival mode. Or if you have the same behavior all the time, or you have the same problems coming up, like for example in your relationship, every time a woman goes away or she starts yelling at you in every relationship, that are signs of that there's something going on inside of you. So the first step you need to take is like being honest to yourself, looking in your own mirror. But what we tend to do is to project our feelings onto somebody or something else is outside of us. So we feel anxious, and what we do is, instead of feeling anxious or feeling the fear inside of us, we start to make money. We need more money, you know, otherwise we can't survive. So we go into doing mode, to do something, or doing nothing, like sitting in fear in a corner somewhere, being totally paralyzed, not doing something. That's also doing something, not doing something. So if you see that you are starting to do something and you feel that something is off, you know, or you feel some tension or something inside yourself, that's really the trigger point or the signal for you that there's something going on inside of yourself. And the only thing you need to do then is go inside. So, and how do you do that? You bring your awareness to your body and feel what's going on. Or you listen to yourself, which words will come, and you hear the truth of what's actually going on. And that takes some courage, to be honest to yourself. But deep down, every man knows what's the truth, you know, if you're really honest. So just take a moment to go to yourself and be honest to yourself. I think that's the first step.
Yeah.
And then you will hear the truth about what's really going on if you're really honest to yourself. And underneath that, there are always feelings, maybe needs or desires or things that are off, and where you need to come into or take responsibility maybe for something or do something. But you first need to make that step to yourself. That's actually what's needed.
Yeah. Are you saying that, it's, we always think that, well, before we become aware and conscious, something outside of us needs to change, but to come into the awareness that we are the only ones that can change. And once we change within ourselves, the world around us changes to reflect that
Yeah,
change. Yeah.
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 I can give some examples about how that survival behavior looks like, because the number one behavior pattern that I always see with almost all men, I think maybe one or two out of 100 don't have it, but the most have it. It's pleasing. So being focusing on others or what they want you to do or what you think they want you to do. So pleasing others or making sure that you don't get into a conflict is actually the same. So that's the number one behavior you see a lot of men doing, instead of standing in their own strength, standing in their own truth, and stand for that. That's a man in his power for me. So, but we do the opposite. We start to please, and a lot of the times underneath that is it's the mother-son relationship. We as little boys started to please our mothers because our mothers told us what to do, how to do it, or what not to do. So that's really the number one I see in those 13 years already that I'm supporting men.
Yeah.
And also the pusher part as well, that wants to have things right now, you know. That's also a big part.
Yeah, this is great because this people pleasing, and you're saying, in 98% of men in your experience have, experience with this, because some people will never be pleased, whatever you do for them, whatever you give them, so it's sort of like, an ongoing experience that's never going to be satisfied. But when the man, are you saying when the man stands in his own truth and his own power, and then he is fulfilled within, and he knows he's living his life in integrity, and as a result in love and being loving to everyone else, if someone's not pleased with his actions, that's on them, that's their issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I believe, but you can tell me if I'm true here, if I'm right here. I mean, but actually, if a man is standing in his own power, in his own truth, in his own integrity, that's actually very sexy for a woman.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's I don't know for all women, but it's we can ask for what we want, but for a man to say no and say it out of his, because it's going against what he needs to do for himself, is it's good, it's then we know the man is solid and grounded and living in his
Yeah,
integrity, because if the man's not living in his integrity, if he's easily manipulated, he's not living in his heart, right?
exactly. And then we come again back to the heart,
Yeah.
because you know that's the main point for me of that word truth is so important, because this is what I always tell men. You can only feel your deepest truth. You can't think your truth. You can only feel it. That's why the feeling is so important.
Yeah, that's a great.
And that makes it so simple. That for me, that makes it so simple, because then actually what you only need to do is learn to go with your awareness to your body, feel, because you can only feel right now. So feeling brings you immediately into the now, and the now is what we are. So I call this like my two-step rocket to consciousness. I think that, yeah, I find it very funny. So the first thing is feeling. So you are aware of your body, and whatever you feel, doesn't matter what you feel, but that I also feel myself while I'm talking here with you. That was a big step to make. It was for me very difficult to also talk, because that's very cognitive, and at the same time feeling myself, being aware of myself. So it was also a big challenge and opportunity to grow in this. But now I can do this. So you only have to feel, then you're in the now, and then you need to be aware of who is it that is feeling. And if you are there, you're immediately into your consciousness. It's actually very simple. But hearing me telling this, also, I remember all those years that I did all this work to come to that simple place.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about that survival mechanism and needing to be conscious of what you are doing to get out of that survival and into living.
Yes. Great
So
points, Coen. Let's go into your childhood now and find out how you got to be the man you are today. We sort of went off track a little bit, but I like sometimes to mix it up. But it is important to know. Now, you did mention your mother, but what was your biggest challenge as a child?
yeah, actually, my biggest challenges already started when I was a 7-month-old fetus. So all my traumas always go back to when I was still in the womb. So probably there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger in my environment, which I already felt, because somehow you pick up all these emotions already, and they come into your body somehow, and you bring them along while you're growing up. So my first trauma started there. It was like a little survival family. I had a mother, father, a younger brother, and it was all for ourselves, everyone was surviving. So my father was the man that was never there. And the funny thing of the story is that he was actually kind of a famous singer in the Netherlands. So it was like everybody knew him except we, his wife and his two sons. And I believe he didn't really want to have children and didn't want to have that family as well. So he was in his own struggle and search for himself. And in a practical way, he was most of the times was never there. And then there was my mother, who was also young, who was had a lot of fear, became a mother, but was still somehow a little child, a little girl, looking for approval, looking for worthiness, looking for love. So, and in that, she had a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear inside of herself, a lot of frustration, and a big critical part. Yeah, so that was like my that are the biggest memories actually of my childhood. So there were also some nice moments, but they were small, and that I don't know. Of course, I don't know if that's the truth, but that's how I remember it, and that says something about the impact of the more negative emotions and the lack of love. And so, as a little child, I felt very lonely. I felt very sad. So I started to victimize myself. And I was already very highly sensitive. I can remember a moment that I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I said to my mother, I had some big insight, and I told my mother, like, hey, if we put all the land and all the money of the world together and we divide it to all the people, all problems are solved. And my mother was like, what are you talking about? You don't have that from us, don't be silly, something like that. So, but I was already living in that, some kind of world about raising consciousness in the world, bringing more love into the world, and also already feeling all those collective problems somehow. And that combined with magic. So I always lived in a world of fantasy and of magic. And I like to call it now my intuition, but actually it's so much more than that. And now I know that world was actually true, that I already experienced it as a little boy. But I was so sensitive that I felt so many emotions of the people and everyone around me. that it was, yeah, it was so intense that I started to disappear somehow. So at the lowest school, people that were also there at that school at the time actually still didn't know when they were adults who I was. That was my magical trick to disappear somehow, to go sit in corners, to live inside of myself, you know, to really disappear. So I wasn't present at all. I was living in my own world inside. So that was of course, out of survival, to cope with, to stand in the situation I was living in. On the other hand, what it brought me was this deep inner work. I went already in when I was little and started to feel and explore all these depths. So yeah, that's how it was like. It was surviving emotionally because it was emotionally very poor, my environment, and also, yeah, it lacked love. You know, there wasn't a father and a mother that had a deep connection. That there was lack of love constantly in all kinds of ways. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Coen. Um, I'm interested in now with the insight you have now, how around your mother, how, she was projecting onto you, but deep down she had the best of intentions. Now, basically, with your father mainly absent, she was basically raising two young boys as a
Mhm.
single mother. But
Yeah.
obviously, you said she was very young. She had her own wounds. She had her projection. She was living in survival mode. I mean, it's not easy. There's a lot of women
No.
who watch these shows too, that are doing the best they can raising boys, let's say. What advice have you got for those mothers? Maybe women that, are in survival mode through,
Mhm.
for whatever reason. What can you say? What's the most important aspects of raising young boys in that situation?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because of course, you need that masculine pillar next to you as well. So if that's not the case, I think two things are needed actually as a woman, to go inside and to, give your all the emotions that are going on inside of you, give them space to be there, so you don't project them, like for instance, like my mother did, on your children. So, and maybe also in your environment, look for support, emotional support as well, to go through your own processes. That's one. And the second one is that from my experiences, as a woman, the best gift you can give is to bring love into the family. That's the biggest gift women have. So bring the love instead of try, because what will happen when you need to raise two children as yourself, as a woman, you will connect with the masculine part inside of yourself, so you can, you stand your ground somehow in that environment where you need to do a lot and you take care of your children and all. But while doing that, the feminine part of you, which is the biggest gift, will go to the background, and that's actually needed. When you bring the love, that's what's, yeah, that's the most needed, and then comes the rest. And of course, you need to do, you need to earn money to run your household and everything, but bring love in the moments that you're there. That's the most needed part, starting with yourself. And I believe that you do that by going inside and giving your emotions also space to be, not only being a man, running that household, but also feeling your fears, feeling your sadness, giving them space, expressing them. Um, yeah, that's very important. The most important. That's how I like to see it.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you.
Mm.
Okay, your adulthood. What was your deepest, darkest moment that impacted your journey?
Deepest, darkest moment. Wow. Well, I have kind of like 8, 9 addictions behind me. So there were some very dark moments.
Was there a
But I think,
particular moment you can remember where it was really rock bottom and you were like, something's got to change?
yeah, there was one. And it's actually funny because it makes me remember I had a cat in when I was in young adulthood, and she was called Turbo. It's like super speed, you know. And there was this one day that she died. She had all kinds of bumps, cancer all over her body. So I went to the doctor, animal doctor, and yeah, she got some kind of liquid, some fluid, and then she died. And that was, for me, she was so close, and I felt so much love in that connection with her. And then she left, and I felt that deep loneliness inside of me again. That was so deep already, coming from that early childhood. And I don't know, it was like one moment I was looking in a mirror and I could see how I lacked self-love, how I didn't take care of myself, didn't take care of my body, totally was constantly disappearing out of my own life, not standing for something. And in that moment, I could also feel, for the first time, really feel that I had something to bring here in this world, something big. So that was a really big aha moment for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
to feel that self-pity and almost drowning in it, and but on the other hand, um, in that moment, being conscious of what I was doing, like, hey, I'm doing this to myself, you know, I'm doing this myself. Nobody else is guilty here. This is me. These are my choices. So yeah, that was the big dark moment, but also in a way a very light moment.
So what was the first practical step or the first couple of practical steps you did to get yourself out of that hole?
Hmm. Well, there were many steps, because when I was like in that young adulthood, I was always drawn to everything that breathes spirituality, like, for instance, tarot card reading, pendulas, books, you can name it, and it attracted me. I feel something with all of it, you know. So I already made those steps, but they were more like playful and unconscious. So the first conscious step, from a place of saying, hey, I want to change, I need to change something, was when I was like 25 years old, I believe. And it was after, again, a relationship breakup, or and a lot of struggles. And then I decided, for the first time, I would go to a psychologist. And it took me like 4 or 5 times. I was going in the city where I lived. I was going to a big door of a big building, and 4 times I left again, and the fifth time I rang the bell. And I went in and made an appointment with a psychologist. And yeah, it was actually very funny, because I had 2 sessions there and then I left again. But in that first session, that woman, she asked me to write my history on paper. So the next session, somehow I felt proud, and I came there with 4 pieces of paper full of my story of my life. And the first thing she said was like, you only have 4 pieces of paper? And I was like, oh. And later on, I started to notice that my whole history was in my head, was clouded by those couple of moments that were so intense, about my mother criticizing me and about my father not being there, and all the other beautiful parts were actually suppressed by those dark clouds. So, and then it made sense that I could only write 4 pieces of paper of my whole first 25 years of my life. So yeah, it was amazing how that mirrored me in my own behavior.
Yeah, great awareness. You spoke about addiction. What addiction?
Yeah.
What addictions did you have over the years?
Wow, so many. So it started with emotional eating, and that's the one that still pops up when I have an intense coaching day full of coaching, intense processes with lots of emotions. I was born 1 month too early, and the first 3 months of my being born, I was a crying baby, and after 3 months, the doctors noticed that my mother had a lack of breastfeed. So I was in total fear and panic of dying probably the first 3 months of my life, having a lack of food. So that emotional food addiction goes so way back, so deep. So that's the first one. And then I'm now 51 years old, so I was like the first period of I think little boys that had a computer. So gaming became my second addiction. And with gaming came also smoking weed. And that was a long addiction as well. I smoked weed for almost 15 years daily. While doing that, of course, I became older, so smoking became a habit. In the early days, I was a DJ, so I was full into playing house music and all every weekend. So alcohol became also nice to suppress my emotions. I had a struggle with connecting with myself, with my emotions, but from there also with women, because I felt very insecure. So porn was also an addiction. Then, oh yeah, and after the gaming became gambling. So, and gambling was just playful in the beginning, but in the end, I ended up in casinos. So that was also a big addiction. And in a way, being frustrated of being the victim, playing the victim a lot of all those years, that's also an addiction. It's not only, we most of the time we think about the addictions like alcohol, but the repetitive character of something you do every time again is also an addiction. So also always being frustrated is an addiction in itself. So probably there are some more, but that are the most, the addictions I had. And with all addictions, I stopped them myself without any support from one day to another. And even with smoking weed, I hear a lot that it's also that you have physical, that there's some kind of physical, how do you say that? No, yeah, a physical part in this addiction, but it's not, because I stopped that after so many years from one day to another. And how I experienced it, it was only all mental. It was just a mind fuck, really. So, yeah.
This is great. I mean, you're number 93, Heart Warrior, and we've covered a lot of subjects, but we've never talked about gambling. So I'm keen to open up this subject. Can you, for those of us that have never gambled, can you just, give a rundown of how, the basic dopamine hit? And I mean, I know it's winning, but what's going on in your head? What keeps someone gambling?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but in my case, I always loved games. So in gambling, it's also a game. So I love that part of it. And then you have, like, with the slot machines, you have all the lights and the sounds. So it's very mental, very cognitive. So that keeps you kind of, it's like the same with an iPhone, you constantly are scrolling, and you see a video and then the next post, and is actually the same. So that has a lot to do with it. The constant sounds, the lights. Well, in my case, with the slot machines or playing poker, for instance, or some other game, you know, there is this game, and then you have that tension of winning. Well, and maybe not only winning, but just the excitement of what's it gonna be, you know. You push a button and what will come next. So you're always excited, so that's a part of it. And then after a while you kind of get numb and you're just sitting there. So I think that's the whole part of winning. And then you lose money and then voices come to you, yeah, I can win it back. Or and that one time that you win, that's the big story. You tell everybody, but all the other times that you lose, you don't tell anybody because you feel maybe ashamed or you feel sad inside. And then again, you need something to suppress that. And so you are getting into some kind of loop and it becomes a behavior. And before you know it, it's just another addiction.
Yeah.
Something you do regularly, just yeah, in the end, to suppress emotions, because underneath every addiction, that's how I see it, are those suppressed emotions that you are walking away of.
Yeah, it's fascinating what you said about the lights and the sounds because, you know, I work with children and there's a lot of children's toys that have got these lights and sounds. And I know I've often thought at the time, wow, that, you know, sort of reminds me of a mini poker machine. You know, I've never played them, but, you know, just I've seen enough movies that but yeah, that light and sound. And you said, you know, that was one of the major draw cards. You know, I guess it just keeps all the senses alert and, you know, so that's just really interesting to have as an awareness for parents as well.
Yeah.
What advice have you got for anyone who is gambling? Because I loved also how you brought in the shame aspect because you know, I can only imagine when you go out and have a night and you come home and you haven't won anything and maybe, you know, you've got to sit with, you know, you can't pay the rent or feed your family. I mean, what have
Mm.
you got to say to men who are in this gambling loop?
Yeah, maybe it's get a bit boring, but I will say the same thing over and over again. Look in the mirror, go inside and be honest to yourself. Why are you doing this? There is something underneath this. There's a reason always. So if you want to get out of this loop of gambling or some other addiction, of course you need to stop your behavior. That's in a practical way a part of it. But the most important part is, why are you doing this? There's always something underneath. And that always goes back to your childhood.
Does it
Always.
always, do all addictions go back to numbing emotions and feelings?
In
Like
my
all
case,
your addictions can you look back in retrospect and see they were all to numb your emotions and feelings so you
yeah,
didn't have to feel?
yeah. So I didn't have to feel that loneliness and that lack of love and sadness.
Mhm.
It was all about that, yeah. And if you have something to do, you know, whatever it is, you don't have to feel. That's the whole thing. So it was all about that. And then of course, if you drink alcohol with a lot of friends, again, you don't have to feel, and maybe you get some attention. So it was also about, you know, and maybe you feel a bit loved then somehow, can be, but you are, what you don't do is go directly to the feelings underneath. So it was all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, I guess smoking weed is very common. I mean, and I know it's legal, right, in the Netherlands, but
Yeah.
and a lot of people will say, but it's a plant medicine. So, you know, it doesn't officially count as anything that would do harm. What's your perspective on that?
Well, starting smoking weed, it didn't start as an addiction. It started just me being young and with another guy smoking, doing something, exploring. So that's how it starts, drinking alcohol, going out into a club. You don't start drinking from an addiction. So it starts playful, you could say, or because you want to try things. So it's also some kind of spiritual journey, you could call it. So but then your system picks up how it works and numbs your emotions, and that part of your brain, your survival part, will take that behavior and use it for its survival. That's how and then it becomes a habit.
Yeah, so
And of course, I can also relate it. I can also relate it to my past, because I don't know if this is always the case, but I would say probably it will. My father was also running away from his emotions and drank a lot, for instance, or took me and my when my parents were divorced, he took me and my younger brother. Once in every 2 weeks he came. It was like Father's Day, and he took us sometimes to a cafe, and he was gambling there. And for him, maybe it was just fun or a game, but you notice that as a child and you take it in. So that part is there also. So not everybody sees that in their early childhood, and maybe they don't start gambling or doing something else. But there will be some kind of behavior to suppress those emotions to survive. So they are always underneath there, always, when it's an addiction.
Yeah, that's a great awareness to have, isn't it? Just around addictions broadly, always to suppress feelings. Now, you're a father, right, of two young
Yeah,
boys aged 8 and 10. What are
yeah.
your priorities now? How do you teach your boys to be in this space that they're not suppressing their feelings?
Well, what I do is, and I don't always like this, but I always ask them, "What do you feel right now?" It's the main question I ask every man I support, and I do the same with them. So if they are projecting their anger to me or to each other, I will ask them, "Hey, what do you feel right now?" Just to get them used to going connect with their body. So that's the main part I do. And on the other hand, what I do is try my best by being a role model myself. So not telling them what to do, but just by letting them see how I do it. I think that's the most powerful you can do. Just be a role model, and not for the sake of being a role model, but living from truth, standing for what you believe in, practicing what you preach. And that's most of the time the biggest challenge we have. So but it works, because it's funny. This week I saw my youngest boy, for example. I saw him drumming on my buffalo drum, just by me drumming. That's another example. And if I tell them about a bit of shamanism or something like that, they start to laugh. But without me wanting them to copy it or wanting them to bring it into their life, just being myself, they start to being enthusiastic about it and trying it themselves. So it's the same with my emotions. So instead of being angry or being frustrated about something they did, going inside and telling them what I saw and how I feel about it and which need I have.
Mm. So,
So,
how does this play out? You said so you've got an 8 and a 10-year-old, and
yeah,
I got two boys, and I can remember when they were 8 and 10. I'm just playing this out in my head. So,
yeah.
they're angry about something or with each other, and you say, "Hey, what are you feeling right now?" How does that play out? Like, do they stop and tell you how they're feeling, and then what do you say to them?
Well, the first thing, the oldest, his name is Bram. The first thing he does most of the time is this, like going away. Because it's also, of course, it's also vulnerable, and they are not used to this, especially from the first years of their of their being, because their mother and I are divorced, and I wasn't that conscious then as I am now in the father, in being a father, and their mother wasn't also, especially not about being emotional. So there is that part already in them that learned how to not be emotional and how to be in a survival mode. And now I bring this in. So the first thing is kind of like going into rejection. But then I go and be with my heart, and I just ask them, and I address like, hey, maybe you find this a difficult question, but yeah, how do you feel right now? Without pushing, you know?
When they respond, and let's say can articulate, I'm angry or I'm frustrated, do
Yeah.
you say anything more, or is enough to name it?
No, feeling it and expressing it is actually enough. But what I do is to bring some understanding to it. So say something like, "Hey, empathic. Is that the right word? Empathetic? Oh,
Empathy.
empathy. You know, bring empathy to the table. So and say something like, "Hey, if this and this is the case, I can imagine that you feel irritation right now. So give some understanding in their emotions. Exactly the same thing as what you need to do as a man with a woman.
Yeah.
Give them emotional understanding. And not only from the head, but really, you know, feel it. And you can only do that when you are in your body with your heart. Otherwise you can't have empathy. That's all about feeling. So I'll do something like that, and it works because there are already moments that I can hear the two boys to each other expressing their feelings already. So that's so nice to see. Yeah, it touches my heart really when I see that. It's so, because it's so important for men to go that way. So
Yeah, just to be able to identify and label, emotions, and to know
yeah,
that, they do pass. It's okay feeling angry now, but it will pass. And just that awareness, which, I guess so many men, especially, from our generation, were told to suppress their emotions and not feel them and not label them and identify with them, just to be
yeah.
stoic. And so, the huge shift into actually being able to identify emotions and being allowed to feel them, that's massive.
Yeah, that's massive. That's for me true power as well. Speaking your truth, also your emotional truth.
Yeah.
And then after that, if you make that step as a man, then you can go deeper into really into your masculine, divine masculine, your divine masculine power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always in the body, I tell it like this, you know, we live, first of all, we live in that head, then we go to our heart. That's more like the feminine feeling, and then we go straight down to the masculine, to the strength, to your balls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great awareness. And I know also that you spoke, you told me that you like to work with and in nature. So let's bring
Yeah.
this aspect into it. How did that start off, and how do you incorporate that into your counseling and therapy sessions?
Yeah, well, actually, when I decided that I really needed to do something with its personal and spiritual development myself and supporting others, I was looking for the right program. And first, I did some um, program, and that was more about being a medium, trance healing, more connected with the spiritual world, which I already was as a child already. So, but in doing that program, I felt like, no, I need to be, it needs to be more grounded, more connected with the earth, more professional in a way. So more people can understand this and I can support more people. Because when you go into that spiritual world, yeah, for some people it's a bridge too far, you know. So, and then I was looking for the right program, and I bumped into a life coaching program of 2 years working into nature. So it's called outdoor life coaching. And it was created by a man called Peter Krieger, who is now a business partner of mine as well. And this whole way of using nature through coaching and therapy, and he's like a 40-plus-year-old experienced therapist and coach, and has an own institute in the Netherlands for more than 40 years already, or 35 years. Developed a lot of training programs for therapists and coaches himself. So I had the honor to go through his 2-year-old program. And now these days, using nature in coaching, it only is a training of 1 to 5 days. So I really had the honor to go deep. And I learned how to use nature in coaching and therapy. And from that day, and that I started my practice, and that's 13 years ago. And I did every session in nature. And now I have a huge understanding about what nature does and how it raises the quality of everything we do out there. And you can see this in a very simple way, because when people are sick or they don't feel good, you know, 9 out of 10 think about, hey, I need to go out into nature. That's a natural instinct we have. So deep down inside, we know that we need to be there for our health. So I started then with using nature, and now I'm 13 years further ahead with a lot of experience. So I know about all the benefits, and I started also teaching other coaches and therapists using nature in their practice, and also in other countries, because what I discovered a couple of years ago, I had like an intuitive question coming up, like, hey, I want to see if there are more, you know, colleagues in other countries who do the same. And so I started Googling, and what I noticed that there wasn't anywhere in the world a program that teaches how to use nature like I learned it, and how it came to Peter in a natural way. Because he just took his students outside into nature because he likes nature, and there it evolved, and he saw many possibilities. So it was actually amazing how this way of working developed through him. So I noticed that, and I said to Peter all those years back when I was in his institute, I said to him, like, I'm gonna go home now, but I feel I will come back. I don't know why, but I feel it already. You feel like family to me, and I will come back someday. So when I noticed that this program wasn't anywhere in the world available, I immediately got this intuitive insight again, and I thought, yes, I need to call Peter. We need to bring this to the world. And this is the way how we can raise the whole quality of coaching and counseling and therapy in the world. So a couple of years ago, we started to bring our trainings to countries outside the Netherlands as well. So that's one of my missions as well.
This is
And
great. You know,
yeah.
the benefits of nature, most people know at surface level, but like, are you saying, like, how is it that you connect with nature? Do you go on hikes? Do you just sit in one place and meditate? What is it how are you bringing nature into your sessions?
Yeah, so what I do is all the things I've learned, and I have so many methods and on different levels in my backpack. It's really amazing. Like things like EMDR therapy, maybe you heard of it. Using constellations, like a family constellation or whatever you want, or voice. I use a lot of voice dialogue as well. I use things I've learned from Tony Robbins as well. It doesn't matter. You can do anything in nature. So what I do is in basics, of course, you go into nature and therefore you start walking. So you walk a path in spite of it, instead of sitting in a room on a chair, which is most common. Outside in an environment where nature is, where trees are, and you do actually the same as you do inside, but then you do it outside. And because you are outside, you are moving and you're using the body much more. So your possibilities are so much more. When I don't know if you are familiar with a family constellation, and do you know that like they make a big constellation of the family from the past, so they use little puppets to put one puppet stands for the mother, and they give it some kind of position, and one stands for the father, and it gets some kind of position, and the brothers and the sisters, and then you get like a kind of energy field, and how the energy field of the family was in the past, and where blockages were, and all kinds of things. You can do that with little puppets. You can do it with live people. I do that in nature using trees, and then you get a whole natural area, or with your behavior parts, your personality parts. You see the whole blueprint of your subconscious outside of yourself, and you can start moving in that. And you can really shift on a very deep level all that parts inside of you. So that's really deep work. But nature makes it so easy. But on the other hand, you can just walk, bring a question with you, and by walking, your brain will be stimulated, and deeper answers and intuitions and thoughts will come up from a deeper place.
Yeah.
So it works so deep. It's amazing what's happening there. For instance, there's a substance called phytoncide, and trees breathe out that substance. But if we breathe that in for like 30 minutes, our body is already producing anti-stress hormones. So all that kind of benefits are going on while doing your thing in nature, and that therefore it goes to a much more deeper level. But not only the process, but we as professionals as well. So me being in nature for half an hour, breathing in that substance, makes that the coach in me will go to a different level of coaching. My questions will raise to a different quality. Everything I do will raise to a different quality.
Yeah,
so that's really amazing.
fascinating. And what just also came to mind is the frequency of the heart is 5 to 8 hertz. And it's my understanding that nature is also 5 to 8 hertz, the earth. So, when you're in nature, you're at the resonance of the heart, the frequency of the heart. So, it does open the heart more and bring more into awareness and feelings.
Yeah, exactly. So, like nature itself, the possibilities are limitless there, the diversity of nature is limitless. So everything you can do there is limitless. Like you say, you can go in and start meditating. You can go in and just go for a walk. I did a lot of silent walking with groups in the past. And just in being in the silence, whole therapeutic processes went on about losing somebody or about big struggles in life. Just by, of course, I led the group from a very present place. I was present there, but still, just going for a silent walk is so powerful. It's amazing what we can do there. So,
And
yeah.
just being away from, electricity and Wi-Fi and TV signals, radio signals, all the stuff that you get in any urban area or any house. Once you get out into nature, you're not being bombarded with all those invisible frequencies. So
yeah, exactly. And another thing that works very deep as well is that if somebody gets an insight, for example, you will get it in nature, and your brain will connect the images, what it sees, to that insight at that moment. And our brains work with visuals. So instead of working with words and all, there you have the visions of nature itself, and that makes that on a more profound level, you will integrate everything that goes on there, and it will stay for such a longer period of time instead of working indoors, sitting on a chair. So yeah, we could talk about this a whole day long, Gemma. So
Very powerful.
yeah, it's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Whom we've got about 20 minutes left. What else needs to be brought into this conversation that you'd like to talk about on your episode of Heart Warriors, that, you know, around men, masculinity, the healing journey? What haven't we covered?
That's a good question. Something with the heart comes up still, and there's something about spirituality as well. Yeah. And with men. So I'm interested how you feel about this, but I feel like that we're living in a time right now that women are still ahead of us men in terms of coming more deeply inside of ourselves, becoming more conscious, going into processes to grow. And I see that still, because I'm still one of the 2-3 men, you know, if there's a training or something, if men call me or at me, 3 out of 5 tell me that the woman was the one that found me first. And in my world, that's not how it is supposed to be. I was a lot of years also a couples coach and therapist for couples as well. So I have also a lot of relationship expertise. And most of the time it was the woman that took charge, that took the lead. And in the dynamics of the masculine and the feminine, the masculine needs to take the lead. That's how things work in my world. So on that level, not all the time, but so men are still behind somehow. So and I feel like now is the time to stand up. So I want to every man that's watching right now, I want to challenge you to stand up for yourself and become the king of your own kingdom and do what's needed, you know, and ask for support as well. Because most of the time I also notice with men that they find it so difficult to ask for support, because somehow their mind wants to figure it out on their own, or they find it vulnerable to ask, or maybe feel a bit of shame or something around that. But a lot of times I notice that they think they will solve it themselves, but what you don't know when you're doing that, this thinking is a survival mechanism in itself to not acting, so you can't do wrong, or so you can't be rejected. That's a really nasty one. Yeah. So it's time for the men to raise their voices, to stand up and take charge, take the lead.
I'm interested in what you said about, you know, 3 out of 5 times it's the woman dragging the man to therapy. Does that work? I mean, does the man have to get to a point where he wants to change and he wants to go to therapy, not just going back to people pleasing? Oh, I'll keep her happy, I'll go to therapy. I mean, how does that play out? You know, like, talk to women and men. Talk to the women who want to, and then you get to the question that we also covered in the beginning, like, are we trying to change something outside of ourselves, or do we just need to change ourselves? What are your thoughts around this subject?
Yeah, that's the sharp point you have there. Of course, when a woman a woman will always ask her man to take responsibility, to take the lead. So from a place of love, she will maybe start looking for a coach. Well, then she finds me, and she says to her man, like, go to him, you know, but that's not how you want it to be. But if you don't do it, nothing changes. So that's a very difficult one. So if a man will come to me because he wants to please his woman, and in like the first 5 minutes, immediately I will notice this because of the way he tells me the story, I will immediately mirror him in this and address it and say, hey, if this is why you come here because you want better for your woman, please leave, because then this won't work. This will only work if you come here for yourself. And as a result of that, you bring something into your relationship as well. And then they immediately wake up. They just need that mirror one time of a man, actually. That works best. So and underneath that, what it shows is how there is a lack of self-love in those men. Because that's what I tell them then, like, who are you then if you do this again for somebody else? Although you mean well and you don't want to lose the relationship, I understand, but hey, where are you? Because that's where it all goes to, you know. You need to do that for yourself. You need to stand up, and then I can take them within this story I created around being a king. So it works, but it's also a trap. Yeah.
What's your definition of a king as you
For
use
me,
it now? Yeah.
yeah, for me, the king is the man that stands is in his own truth in every situation, in every area of life, and speaks his truth, acts upon it, and but also is a man connected with his heart, or not, but and is connected with his heart. His truth comes from his heart. That for me is a real king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you seeing the men's movement playing out there in Holland, in the Netherlands? I mean, I probably interviewed two or three, or maybe you're the third or fourth men from Holland in this series. And
Oh, wow.
compared to the rest of Europe outside the UK, it would definitely be the country that, I've had the most connection with in this series in Europe. So how are the Dutchmen going, in the collective rise in consciousness and awareness?
Yeah, there is at this moment there is a big change going on. There are lots of men's circles popping out of the ground, like that is going on now for about 3 years, I think. So there's really a change going on of men that are becoming more conscious, becoming much more connected with their inner feelings, with their heart, that have the courage to stand up. And still it's a small part of society as well. So the biggest part of men are just doing their thing, going with everyday life, still living by the example of the story that they were told about, living the dream, having a relationship, kids, a house, a nice job, and forgetting about themselves and where they are standing for, and making that happen, whatever it is. So there is a change going on, especially in the connecting with the more feminine part of us, with men in Holland, and still it's a small part as well. So, but more than like, let's say 35 years ago, because I was already doing little things then, so I can compare it. There is change, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great to see. Um, what would you say your highest quality value as a man is?
Hmm. Yeah, that is my feeling, intuition is my biggest quality, and next to that also my being able to have the fire to come into action as well.
Right.
This yeah, in a magical way most of the time. So I have like the ability to create magic out of nothing. And all those things have gone to, at this moment, to actually my presence. That's the biggest, yeah, that's I think the biggest strength I have right now. Just being present, and from there everything else will develop or will be created anyhow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really powerful because I mean we all know what presence is, but how many, well, we're talking about men actually embody it, to be present in a conversation or to be present with their children or their partners, or what advice have you got for men to become more grounded in their presence?
Yeah, then again I come back to the feeling, because that's the way how I got to this presence myself. Being aware of your body, going with your awareness to your body in every moment. Like, for instance, when you say something, take a moment to first feel that you're there wherever you are, and then again connect with the environment. Or if you are with your children, go back to your body, feel that you are there, and from there connect again with your children. That's the way how I did it, and from there I saw in every situation where I could do that, where I couldn't do that, what the problems were. And now this is actually the only thing I do the whole day long, just being present, being aware of being present. And if I'm not, going back by feeling my body. And yeah, I advise you to, because the things I experience in life, and which I feel like rushes of energy, that's really amazing. That's like the best feeling ever. It's like feeling love in every moment that I can feel that. That's wow. Everything is okay. Nothing else is needed then, it's all added to it, but the feeling in itself is already amazing. So yeah, makes life very simple.
Right, yeah. What advice have you got for men who are like, okay, I need to become more aware of my feelings, but I'm scared of appearing too feminine or going too far to the feminine. How
Mm.
can they balance and harmonize this going into the heart and being so aware of feeling and emotions while still being, grounded and masculine?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, don't worry, because when you are connected with your feelings, you also feel your intuition, and your intuition gives you impulses to act. So you are still a man. You will still do all kinds of things. You only bring that feeling into your presence, into who you are, and into the things that you do. So you actually become stronger. So don't only go about feeling, also act upon or speak your truth or act upon your truth from that place of being connected with your feelings. That would be my advice. Otherwise, yeah, then you maybe become too feminine in a way. But then that only shows that there is some kind of challenge in acting upon something. That's what a lot of sensitive men also have. They are also most of the time have some kind of blockage on standing for the truth and acting upon it,
Mm.
because it's easier for them to feel. So you have like those two opposites of each other. You have men that are more in the doing, and you have who you could say, the more masculine part somehow, and you have men that are more the sensitive and that went more into the feeling, and they have more more work to do to go into action, and the other men have more work to do to connect with their feelings. That's probably the two streams I see.
Yeah, great insights. I think that's important to bring up, isn't it? Because, there's so much said about men and emotions, and, a man exploring this journey, to try and find the healthy medium between being, and the same for women, being over emotional and also being, there's healthy emotional and there's wounded emotional. We don't go dumping our emotions on people, but we still want to be expressive and live in our truth. And, the same for the masculine journey. So have you got any other advice to say around that?
Well, from the masculine point of view, what's the most important, I believe, is being present. And again, you need to be connected with your body to be present, because a man who is present, that's the guy that comes into a bar and everyone feels it, Everyone looks to the left because there's someone coming in that you feel.
Right.
That's the present man. That man is connected and grounded in his body. So that is like the gateway to being present. And that's where the masculine power is. Because in relation to a woman, despite of communication and all other kinds of things, that's actually the thing she longs for most, a man that she can really feel in his presence. And to make it practical, what I, for example, experienced that when I'm present as a man and a woman is frustrated and starts to project things onto me, and I'm just present there, I'm actually becoming like a mirror where she looks in and sees herself after a while. So I had this with the mother of my children. I had this with an ex-girlfriend. They started criticizing me. In the past, I would shoot into my old wound with my mother, but I'm just being present. And the funny thing was that through this presence, I could feel, I could see where her wound was at that moment, where her emotions were. And after a while, it shifted, and they came back to me like, "Oh, sorry, now I can see that it was my own thing." So that's very powerful as a man. Just being there, that is very masculine.
Yeah,
And you don't have to do so much, but it is doing in itself. So yeah, learn to stay and be present. That's actually what's needed.
Yeah, very powerful. Wow, this has been a great conversation because, talk, especially around men, emotions, feelings, is so powerful and so much needed. So we'll start wrapping up now, Coen. So first of all, where can people find you? And we'll drop all your links below in the description.
Great. Well, they can find me on the internet, of course. I have a website, Coen van Broekhoven. .nl. NL is for the Netherlands. I also have, with a friend of mine, we do men's work in groups. It's called Sacred Masculine Awakening. That's our mission, to awaken the whole masculine in the world. .com. We have in 2 weeks' time, for example, we have a retreat on Ibiza, an island from Spain. So we do a lot of men's work with groups, and of course you can find me on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And also, if you like to learn more about that, using nature in coaching and counseling and therapy, there is our website from Peter and me called outdoorlifecoaching.com. And there are also online training courses as well there, so you can learn the basics and some advanced stuff. Very simple but very powerful to raise the quality of the thing you do. So that's a nice one as well. And in the nearby future, I'm also teaming up with Ryan Matthew Poling. I believe you know him as well, right? So
He was one of the early heart warriors. I'd have a guess that it was number 9, 8 or 9, somewhere
all
around.
right.
Yeah.
So he and I are really best buddies these days, and we walk like the same path, even in things that that still come up and where we have some struggle in doing. And we are gonna provide international men's work as well in some months. But also, and this is really amazing to share as well, I already had some shared circles with men and women, and the healing that takes place in each other's field of energy is really amazing. When I'm present as a man in a field with women, a lot of grief come out, and otherwise for men being in a field of women as well. So Ryan and I were going to provide some kind of women's circle with us as the men being present there, and we're going to see what will happen there. So I believe that's needed in the world at this moment as well, that we find each other, the masculine and the feminine, to heal parts within ourselves that we can only heal in the presence of the other.
Definitely.
So
I
so
love
that's coming up.
Yeah, exciting. Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's something to look forward to. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, our final message to men that, are at that, they're struggling in those deepest, darkest moments. What have you got to say to those men that you haven't already said?
Well, just this one thing, please stand up, pick up the phone or start Googling and find some support and walk this path with yourself and with somebody else. Can be a woman, can be a man, be a coach or a therapist or whatever, but take responsibility, take the lead for yourself and all the people around you. And step into your own kingdom. That's my that are my final words. It's beautiful there.
Yeah, beautiful final words. Well, thank you so much, Coen. I've loved this episode. It's just such great insights for a man, obviously, living from the heart and connected to nature and, all being able to articulate feelings and emotions and the masculine journey and the importance. And, of course, it's all coming from your own experience. So it's what's worked for you, which is the best teachings and the most authentic teachings for each of us to be able to express our own journey. So thank you from my heart to yours. And it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Everyone, if you could like, share, subscribe, and I will be back in a few days with another episode of Heart Warriors. Stay on if you like. Bye.
Bye bye.